One of my policies is to not speak about other commentators unless it's either praise or I have like an extremely strong disagreement with them on something. And this is one of those instances. So, about a week ago, Sam Seder posted a video where a caller asked him about Marianne Williamson. And I'm going to play some parts of it because I'm not going to play the whole thing. And I'll respond to why what he said annoyed me. And that's putting it lightly.
My name's Elena. I'm calling from Virginia, Alexandria, so right south of D.C., if you know the area.
A little bit. What's on your mind, Elena?
Well, I really wanted to talk about Marianne Williamson. I wanted to listen a bit more deeply what your thoughts are on her. And start that conversation.
I mean, to be totally honest, I don't have any deep thoughts on her. There are some things that I've heard her say that I don't necessarily agree with. There's some things, there are some positions that she has I do agree with. I tend not to be as a person, some of her spiritual stuff doesn't necessarily resonate with me, but I don't necessarily have a problem with it. It's just my personality. But my feeling is more generic about her than that. Or my position, which is we do need someone who is going to be articulating a more progressive view than Joe Biden represents in the primary. And I honestly don't know who that person is going to be. And I don't even know necessarily who I'd want it to be. She would not be my first choice for those reasons, but we need somebody. And so I'm certainly supportive of the idea that she would run in a primary. I am these days pretty much every primary, all primaries are good.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I hear you. The problem that I have, I think a little bit of what the media, you can say, the mainstream media and also independent media, is that they're really harping hard on the whole spirituality thing. And I feel really, frankly, that it's almost a way of kind of defanging people that actually have very radical and progressive positions. I don't want to echo her too much, but, thinking of how Martin Luther King is kind of portrayed as, this good-hearted, visionary, loving Baptist minister who just wanted nothing more than equal treatment of African Americans, and history tends to whitewash the fact that he was a socialist. He espoused all these things about changing the economic system, actually recognizing that white Americans were also very poor, even, in some cases even more poor, and that it required an entire kind of systemic change. And, I just worry that the conversation has kind of become, entirely, not my dog, there's a dog outside, kind of overrun with like, voodoo,
Well, I mean, to be honest,
I just want to jump in. I want to say, like, the thing is like, it's not the spiritual, it's just idealistic. Like, regardless of the content of the spiritualism, it's sort of an idealistic thing. Like MLK, in addition to being more of a socialist than I think Marianne Williamson is, which isn't to insult Marianne Williamson, it's just like MLK was like more about that. Like MLK had a big coalition behind him. So that, to me, it's like, I think we like primary should be a place to engage on ideas, but really it's not super interesting until like when Bernie got like the nurses union and different groups like that to get behind him. Then it's actually like more than just a sort of a discourse thing.
And here's the thing is that like I tend to agree with your assessment of how the media is treating her, but that on some level is also why like she's not necessarily my preferred candidate, because I also understand she's not going to win. She doesn't have a movement behind her. She has no, infrastructure. And it's a completely different animal. She is running a like an issue campaign. I don't know what that issue is going to be, but it is, what Bernie essentially tried to do in 2016, which is he was just running to raise certain issues. In that campaign, it was really money in our politics and the power of essentially the 1%. And she's not the best person to do that because of the fact that she has this baggage about spirituality. Yes, it would be nice if our media did not use whatever they can to discredit left perspectives, but they're going to. And in a perfect world, I'd rather not spend the time lamenting on the ease in which they're able to dismiss some of her ideas, which I am supportive of. In a perfect world, that would be great if that didn't exist, but it does. And so, particularly when we're running an issue campaign or like essentially a messaging campaign, the messenger becomes, important in that respect. But yeah, I share your lament, but I wouldn't spend too much time on it.
So I'm just curious, if it really came down, let's just say, in a fantastical world where Marianne Williamson and Joe Biden were really like the only two options, equal influencer, I'm not sure. It was down to those two, and she actually had a shot. Who would you actually vote for? I'm just curious.
If she had a shot at what, winning the primary?
Yes.
Or what about the general?
You mean for the presidency? Like,
yeah.
To become president? I would want Marianne Williamson.
No, I'm asking you, telling me that you're giving me a hypothetical where she has a chance to win the primary. Does she also, in this hypothetical, have a legitimate chance to win the general election?
Yes. I mean, with her attributes and her
if there's a candidate whose policies I like better, who has an obvious ability to win in a general election, then yeah, I would be probably supportive of her. But but that's also like, if I had wings, could I fly? I'm not going to jump off a building right now to test that theory.
No, I understand, but you see how it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy here, right? How
No, it's not a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not a self-fulfilling prophecy. No, I'm sorry. I don't accept that. I am not capable of willing 100 million people to do something.
Or Bernie would have won.
Or Bernie would have won.
No, of course. I understand. I mean, we're all stuck in the same.
I guarantee you that when Marianne Williamson ends her campaign, there will be at least 150 million voters who have absolutely never heard her name.
So the beginning part of the clip is not that bad, where he talks about how she said some things he likes, some things he doesn't. She's not his preferred candidate. These are all things I've heard people say before, that we have other people that maybe we're more familiar with, that we think we're more in line with. None of that opening part is really problematic to me. But when we get into the segment where the caller mentions the media's treatment of her through speaking about her spirituality, and Seder cites this as one of his issues with her, one of the reasons why she's not his preferred candidate, and that he understands she is not going to win, that's where I start to take issue. Later on in the same clip, he mentions that she doesn't have a movement behind her and is running an issue campaign, and he doesn't know what that issue is. And I said, I feel like if you watch any interview that Williamson has done, it could be the one she's done on TV networks, the one she did with Andrew Yang, one she did with the Young Turks, with Secular Talk. There's a fairly consistent through line of this is an anti-war, pro-single payer, or I guess Medicare for all, pro-infrastructure development. This is someone who's got a fairly defined set of issues that they're running on or supportive of. pro raising wages. These are all things that you can see continuously in any series of interviews with her that you might come across online. So for him to try and say that he doesn't know what the issue is, that speaks a lot less about her as a candidate and just his ignorance on anything having to do with her. And of course, one of my favorite parts is where he says she's not the best person to do that, referring to challenge Biden on from a left wing standpoint, which he says he's in favor of primaries, and that's something I agree with, because of her baggage surrounding her spirituality. And this was really funny because, and I say this with complete sincerity, every single candidate, especially ones that run for president, because presidential races get way more attention than any other elections, unfortunately, but it is the case. Every single person who runs for president has baggage. A lot of people are comparing Williamson's run with Sanders, and for good reason. She has some similar positions to him. Sanders was accused of being sexist during both of his campaigns, where he was openly asked, "Why are you trying to stop the first woman nominee of the party?" And let's not forget when Snake Elizabeth Warren accused him of telling her in private that he didn't believe a woman could defeat Trump in the 2020 election. In addition to that, we've had people dig up plenty of old stuff with him. They were upset that he had praised the educational system of Cuba. Just digging up old stuff and smearing him with it and distracting from issues. And you can go back even further than that. Look at Obama. Who could forget when he ran the first time, there was the whole conspiracy relating to his pastor that they were trying to drag him down with. Or if you want to go even further than that, who could forget when the younger Bush 43 was running and his past as an alcoholic was brought up? Or go further back than that, Clinton and his affairs were mentioned and eventually turned out to be foreshadowing of the Lewinsky affair. My point is, anytime you have someone running for president and that person could be as old as 70, as young as 40, you can expect something from their past to be brought up and used as a smear or an attack against them in their current capacity. And sometimes that stuff is fair, and sometimes it isn't. And in Williamson's case, it hasn't been, and the same thing with Sanders as well, in my view. But my point I'm making is, if they were not going after her for her spirituality, it would just be something else. Because they do this with presidential candidates, especially ones that actually are trying to run on a specific issue all the time. I mean, heck, look at Gabbard during the 2020 cycle. You had the previous Democratic presidential nominee, Hillary, come out and say that she was being cultivated by Putin as an asset to run against Trump in the event of some crazy conspiracy theory that Putin wanted her to win, and they tried to use that against her. So every single presidential candidate, whether, again, they're at 1%, 5%, 10, 20, 30, has baggage. Williamson's is really goofy and not even a thing I would actually take seriously. But, it's something that you have to, if you support her positions, just accept this is what happens to people when they run. They get scrutinized, they get lied on, and it's up to supporters of that person to brave the storm. Eventually, the caller gets around to asking Seder if, because the caller asked like a hypothetical of, would you support Williamson over Biden? And then instead of just answering yes, as he apparently agrees more with her than with Biden, he asks, he answers the question with the question. He's like, well, does this also, in this hypothetical, does this also mean she has a chance of winning the general? And the caller has to say yes to that. Now, Seder responds in the affirmative, but then because we get into this ridiculous stuff, he says he is not capable of willing 100 million people to do something. And that's kind of obnoxious, because what do 100 million people have to do with whether you would support the candidate that is closer to you ideologically than the incumbent president in the primary? How do those two things correlate? I know that when it came time to vote for Sanders in California during the 2016 cycle, he was behind, and I didn't care. I still supported him. It didn't really matter to me whether or not he wasn't winning or whatever. And now we get to my favorite part, the part that made me want to do this video in the first place, where he says that he can guarantee when Williamson ends her campaign, 150 million voters will not know who she is. So when he says that he can't will 100 million people into doing something, I think that's legitimate. You can't make people vote for somebody. But I'll be damned if you can tell me that you can't make people know who someone is. Because let's make no mistake, fame is a very subjective, poorly defined thing. Like it doesn't really have a specific structure behind it. And really, what's so sad about this race is that I think of Sanders in March of 2015. People did not know who he was, including a lot of the people that would eventually end up voting for him. And how did he go from being a relatively unknown senator in a small state to now one of the most influential and well-known politicians in all of America? And the answer is simple. His supporters went around to all the different states that he was campaigning in. They told people about him. They explained what his positions were. They mentioned him over and over. And his notoriety and name recognition increased as a result of that. Williamson, I will freely admit, is nowhere near as famous as Trump or Biden or even arguably DeSantis. But let's make no mistake about this. If Seder's goofy video on her was watched by his full 1 million subscribers instead of a 20th of them, and if every time I did a video about her or somebody else did a video about her, and every time she put up a video on her channel, they always got 100,000, 500,000, a million views, and ABC and Fox News and MSNBC were interviewing her and talking about her day after day like they did with Trump during the 2016 cycle, everybody would know who she is. Which is why I said that the caller was very accurate to say that he's committing a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it's one thing to say, look, I can't make people vote for someone. I'm going to go out and tell them why I like this person, why I support their positions. You know, I'm going to make some effort even if I don't think it's going to be successful, because I said before, it's hard as hell to challenge an incumbent president. It just is. Doesn't matter who it is. Instead of acknowledging there's difficulty, but I'm still going to try, he goes, oh, well, she's not going to win. And not only is she not going to win, but there's going to be 150 million people who are not going to know who she is. And I can guarantee that. And that's that. It's like, you know, you have this channel again with 1 million subscribers. I'm very confident that he could bring her on if he wanted to, because she's gone on Secular Talk's channel and TYT. And you make one video about her during her campaign that not even 3 weeks into the campaign declares that it's just not going to win. Like, we don't even bother, don't even try. The person who is the head of the campaign, or the candidate themselves, is going to be so unremarkable that there's going to be 150 million people who don't. And it's like, what a strange number to throw out. I mean, 150 million people don't vote in the Democratic primary. Usually the winning candidate has about maybe 15, 16, 17, some number under 20 million votes. And the winning general election candidate tends to get about 60 to 80 million votes. So he threw out this extremely large number that's actually bigger than the overall number of people that vote. And it's like, they won't know who she is. But like I said, that's something that if that happens, that's not the result of you not being able to will people to know who she is. It's very easy for a society to decide to make someone famous. And he's choosing to not use his platform to assist her with getting some name recognition, notoriety. So that's why for the caller and for myself, it comes off as self-defeating. And watching this clip, it just reminds me of why progressives in America will never get anywhere. Because if they're not tearing down the people that are running, they're sitting around with their pessimism and doing nothing to actually assist any of the people that they supposedly agree with winning. And it's just an extremely downtrodden, lifeless futility in even listening to these people. Like I don't feel as if anything was gained even watching this clip. Like what insightful thing did he say here? There's some dire predictions and an extremely self-defeating, pessimistic prediction that is not based in reality or any actual semblance of a proper calculation. Like I said, if it was March of, or excuse me, February or January of 2024, and she's still behind by 70 points, I'll say, yeah, this isn't going anywhere. But she just got in. And as a person with 1 million subscribers, he's choosing to not cover her or talk about her, which is only going to keep making it to where it's harder for her to get around. Now, of course, her other supporters, such as myself, can mention her, but, I don't have even half or a tenth of the number of subscribers he has. So, there are some of us who have more power when it comes to getting a message out there, and we're choosing not to use it and instead sticking our finger out and going, this person can't win. They might as well just give up and go home already. I'm tired of pessimism, and I'm tired of these, I don't know what these people are. They say they're progressive, but they always find a way to be against the progressive or to tear them down with some silly prediction. So like I said, we'll keep on trying to get her name out there. I can't make people vote for her, but I know for a fact that me mentioning her has been something that has caused apolitical / people who just aren't into this stuff as much as me to know who she is. I've mentioned her to at least 5 or 10 different people who had no idea that Biden was being primaried. Because like I said, notoriety and fame are things that we can control. If enough of us get together and share her name and what her positions are, she can go from being one of the unknown contenders for president to one of the most well-known at any point in history. And it's just sad that like so much pessimism, I've had times where I feel depressed or not excited for stuff, but I mean, these people don't even try. They just declare, all right, this isn't going to work. And I'm tired of that.